Chapter 1. The Birth of a Salesman. New York is actually a fairly easy city to navigate. Most of the streets are laid out in a nice, neat, orderly grid. If I drop off my 92-year-old grandmother from Wisconsin in the middle of Times Square, Nana could find her way around with no problem. Downtown Manhattan, anything below 14th Street, is a totally different story. Sure, the West Village is quaint with cobblestones, quiet streets, and federal-style townhouses, but the street layout can make about as much sense as a 4-year-old trying to solve algebra problems. It's weird and confusing. This should explain why one of my first clients, Jessica, was so annoyed with me. Jessica was a 20-something who responded to my ad on Craigslist. That's how new brokers like me found clients in 2008. We placed ads, clients called, and we arranged to meet with them. It's actually very similar to arranging a date with a prostitute. Jessica had a budget of $2,500 a month. She wanted a 2-bedroom she could convert into 3 bedrooms, so she and her 2 roommates, who were both named Jessica, by the way, could fit. I was taking her to an apartment on Morton Street that might be a good fit for her and her mother. Her mother was her guarantor, meaning she was responsible for paying all of the rent if Jessica and the other Jessicas lost their jobs or spent all of their money on designer handbags. Jessica 1 kept handing me her phone because her mom, who was in Michigan, insisted I give her sportscaster's play-by-play of the apartment search. We had been wandering around for 20 minutes, which is about a decade in New York City time where everything must move quickly. I knew we were really close by, but I couldn't find the right street. You can be lost in the village even when you know exactly where you are. We were on the corner of Christopher Street and 7th Avenue, but I didn't know which way Morton Street was, and I couldn't afford a Palm Treo or a BlackBerry, the smartphones of the day. The iPhone had just made its debut, but most people didn't have one back then. Every morning, I would print out tiny maps and directions for each of my appointments. I'd fold them up in my pocket so I could refer to them if I needed to. Walking with Jessica, I kept trying to sneak a peek at my map, but I couldn't get a good look without her noticing. I tried to sidetrack her by saying that I was giving her a quick tour of the area. I pointed out the apartment where NBC sitcom Friends was filmed. And I told her Morton Street was just a couple of blocks away. 10 minutes later, it became clear we had circled the block again when we ended up in front of the same newsstand. Between the Mentos and the extensive Snapple selection were newspaper headlines screaming shock words like plunge, crisis, due to a crashing financial market. I was about to face my own mini crisis with Jessica. She had it. She glared at me like she was whipping me the finger with her eyes. "Oh my God, what is wrong with you?" she shouted. "You shouldn't be allowed to show apartments to humans ever." She stuck out her arm, and a taxi screeched to a stop in front of her. She jumped in and sped off, leaving me standing on the street in my cowboy boots, feeling pathetic and lame. What if she was right? I glanced back at the newsstand. The headlines were taunting me. There was a terrible recession. Why was I trying to sell real estate when the economy had fallen to pieces? I was nearly out of money. I felt almost destined to be one of those guys in his parents' basement playing video games in his underwear and eating yodels. Enter Ben Kennedy. I headed back to the office uptown on 49th and Madison, thinking I couldn't feel any worse. It turned out I could feel way worse, thanks to my arch nemesis, Ben Kennedy. Ben was from the Midwest and barely said a word to anyone around the office, other than the occasional restrained hello. But Ben was a great broker. As I dragged myself back to my desk, I could hear Ben closing another deal, probably his 10th rental deal of the day. While he was bringing in piles of signed leases and earning huge commission checks, I was roaming around the city lost. How did he do it? I had a top-notch education, came from a good family, and was a preppy-looking actor with a gleaming smile. What does he have that I don't? He barely even speaks. My ego couldn't understand it. How was he constantly closing deals when I couldn't rent a single convertible 3-bedroom walk-up to Jessica to the 3rd power? I had reached a low point, and I needed to talk to someone. I decided to call my older brother Jimmy. He was 10 years older than me and had what I deemed a real life. He had a wife and kids and a solid job in finance. Jimmy has always looked out for me. He helped me move to New York City, he was with me when I opened my first bank account, and he showed me how to get a credit card. Surely he could crack the mystery of why Ben Kennedy was killing it and I was broke. I crawled out onto the fire escape with my flip phone and scrolled down to Jimmy's office number. Before he could even say hello, I was on a major rant about quitting, sucking, life sucking, Ben Kennedy sucking, and I worked so hard. I continued with my sob story, even with other phones ringing in the background of Jimmy's office, along with the sounds of people doing important things like making money and succeeding at life. My brother was clearly busy, and before I could spit out the words, "I've had it, I'm quit," he cut me off with, "Stop being such a little bitch. You've been working as a real estate agent for 5 minutes. Suck it up. If Ben Kennedy can do it, you can too." Click. Hello? Jimmy? Oh my God. Did he just hang up? Oh, he did. I crawled back in the window just as Ben Kennedy was getting off the phone. He leaned back in his chair with the most satisfied smile on his face, like he just rented out an entire apartment building or maybe the Empire State Building. I walked straight over to Ben Kennedy's desk. Before I got too nervous, I blurted out, "Hey, Ben, so, how do you rent so many apartments? What do you do? I'm new to this and trying to figure it all out, and you're awesome. So it would be really great to get a few tips from the best in the biz, buddy." Ben looked me up and down, taking in my cowboy boots, the khakis, and my belt with the oversized and jarringly shiny buckle. This was my nice outfit, by the way. And he said, "Nah, man, I ain't telling you shit." It was the most I ever heard him say. Turning point. Take 1. There's no doubt that transforming yourself into a selling machine like the Terminator, but without the violent killings, won't happen overnight. You'll have periods in your career when there are more questions than answers. You won't know how to close every deal, handle every client's issues, or have all the answers for your team. But just take a step, even if it's small, and you'll be closer to it. Don't doubt the magnitude that a small action can ultimately have. No one will hand you a secret formula for success. You will realize what the formula is only after you've created it. Sirhan's secret number 1. The secret to your success will be revealed in hindsight. You won't recognize it until you've already lived it. Ben Kennedy wasn't telling me shit. Okay, fine. My reaction could have been, "Ben is such a dick, people suck." I could have decided at that moment to quit real estate. I could have begged my mother to buy me a plane ticket home and left New York City forever. Who needs Manhattan when you could move back home and your parents have all the cable channels and the kitchen is stocked with Oreos and ice cream, my 2 favorite foods next to Twizzlers, Lucky Charms, and chicken fettuccine Alfredo. But my brother's insult was running through my head on repeat. Was I really working as hard as I thought? I wouldn't say a light bulb went off, but there was a mild flicker, and the light was just bright enough for me to see that, maybe Jimmy was right. Maybe I was a little bitch. I had to stop and think, is this who I want to be? I share a bathroom with 25 people in my apartment building in Koreatown. At night, I stand on a stage located in a basement with my arms up, repeating the line, tick, tock, for 30 consecutive minutes because I've been cast as a clock in a play about Edgar Allan Poe. You know who wasn't playing a clock in a shitty play? Ben Kennedy. That's who. Was this my life? And more importantly, was it the one I wanted? For the first time, I really started to think about what I wanted my life to look like. Did I want to drive used cars, wear Gap khakis, take an occasional Caribbean cruise, and eat out at Outback Steakhouse every Friday? That's a perfectly nice existence. Gap khakis are comfortable, and who wouldn't want to end their week with a plate of Kookaburra wings and a Melbourne porterhouse? Or did I want something different? Did I want a life that was completely unhindered by anything? Limitless possibilities. Expansion in all ways. That sounded a lot better than my current situation of broken in tears. I understood that I had a choice to make. Did I want to be moderately successful? Or did I want to be phenomenally successful? Was I going to be a good broker or the best broker? I looked over at Ben Kennedy. He was on the phone, chuckling merrily with a client. Maybe I did suck as a salesperson right now. But was there any reason I couldn't change that? It didn't matter what made Ben Kennedy so awesome at his job. I didn't need to know the secret to his success, even if he had leaned over and said, "Okay, Sirhan, here's how I do it. I only eat orange foods and I dance naked under the full moon because I'm also a witch." How would that have helped me? Ben Kennedy had found the secret to his success, and it was time for me to find my own. I didn't know how to be a great broker, or even one that just wasn't terrible, but it was time for me to take initiative. I had no idea what my first step would be, but I knew I wanted to take one. I never planned on being a salesperson. Footnote: I didn't have an aha moment to launch my career. But while performing Shakespeare in a park, a grassy knoll off the West Side Highway, in the middle of New York City traffic alongside a 75-year-old man playing Father Capulet who believed this thing was his big break, I will never forget thinking, I do not want this to be my future. I was just happy with each performance that did not end with us all getting run over by a car. End footnote. The day my brother called me out for my terrible attitude and ridiculous expectation that renting apartments would be as easy as selling Girl Scout cookies was a turning point. It was a small but significant moment that I could only see in retrospect. My turning point could easily have been missed. It's not as if I got hit by a bus and thought, "Wow, I've come out of this coma against all odds. I should probably do something amazing with the rest of my life." Don't wait for a dramatic moment to make a move, because it might not come, ever. If you've been planning to be awesome your entire life, now is the time to put a plan into action. Why wait a second longer? Be awesome now. Initiative is my favorite word. It was time for me to make a serious change, but I had no idea what my first steps would be. I went to bed a low-paid hand model in the most expensive city in the world and woke up the next day as a real estate broker. And guess what? Both of those guys were totally broke. I had no salary, no benefits, and no handbook on how to succeed at the job. I did not magically transform overnight into someone with contacts, money, sales skills, or even good shoes. But there was one difference. I was excited about going to the office. Going to the office used to be a drag, like a punishment I had to endure until some famous director agreed with me that I should be the next Brad Pitt. I'd stop in between apartment showings to check my voicemail. "You have 0 messages," and drink a chai latte at Starbucks until it was time to show another. But the day after the Jimmy calls Ryan a bitch incident, going to the office felt like a positive. The office felt like an anchor. I stood taller, and my shoulders felt lighter. I sat at my desk in the little office above Burger Heaven, and I couldn't imagine how I would get from point A, selling nothing, to point B, selling everything, but I understood that it would take a lot of hard work and initiative. But wait a minute. It turns out that taking initiative was something I definitely understood. I'd been all about initiative since I arrived in New York City with nothing but a pair of cowboy boots and a bottle of brown hair dye. I started going gray when I was 16. I shared my very first apartment with 2 roommates from Hamilton College. They were both paralegals looking to go to law school who landed jobs with good law firms, the kind that have about 50 names and require insane work hours. I was pursuing my dream of being an actor. I had no boss. I didn't have the same intense schedule or pressures that my roommates had. But my dad, who had always valued hard work and discipline, reminded me that if I wanted to succeed, I should work harder than my pre-law, Advil-popping, over-caffeinated roommates. I should get up before they did, work later, and dedicate myself fully to the art of acting. It was good advice. There are a lot of actors in New York City. I'm guessing the number of wannabe actors in New York City is about equal to the city's massive rat population. It's not something you really notice But if you stop and take a look around, you suddenly see they are everywhere. I had to do something. I couldn't just pop into a bodega for a block of tofu and hope the lady in front of me with a giant bag of cat food was actually a casting director and I'd be discovered for the role of first guy killed in Saw 23. I had to take initiative to reach that kind of success. I realized that taking initiative with my acting career led me to some very unexpected places. I got to play an evil biochemist on a soap opera. I got to run over a guy with a car in an indie film. I was in a production of Romeo and Juliet staged along the West Side Highway. And how many people can say they were a hand model? My hands were painted like teapots and dragons to sell phone plans. My hands were all over the world. I was hand famous. Sure, my acting career might not have been the big victory I imagined it would be. Turns out, I'm not Brad Pitt. My success as an actor was never even on par with lesser members of the Baldwin or Culkin dynasties. The closest I ever got to feeling like a famous actor was when I told a bouncer at a club I was Dr. Evan Walsh IV from the soap opera As the World Turns. He let me into the VIP room, but I still couldn't afford the drinks. A few weeks later, my character ended up being murdered by his own grandmother anyway. Sitting at my desk across from the indomitable Ben Kennedy with his stupid haircut, I realized that, sure, our backgrounds were different. We were like kids from the opposite side of the tracks in a John Hughes movie, The Breakfast Club or Pretty in Pink. But maybe what motivated us was actually the same. For each of us, no deals equaled no paycheck, and who knows what that meant for Ben. Maybe it meant he'd have no money to pay his bills or could end up homeless. Or move back to a hometown that only had one traffic light. I had no idea. But like me, Ben didn't seem to want to look back, just forward. And that meant we both needed to make sales. I wanted to stay in New York City, the land where dreams are made amongst the noise and crowds. Moving back to Colorado, where my parents had moved after I went to college, conjured up some frightening images. Me working as a ranch hand, painting a never-ending fence. Then I marry a winsome cowgirl, have a few kids, buy a tractor, maybe get a dog and a few chickens, and then die. I wanted bigger and better things for myself. I wanted to reach my full potential, and that meant doing whatever it would take to stay in New York City. Maybe I had reached my full potential as an actor, but I certainly hadn't reached my full potential as a human being. Landing a role on a soap opera after having auditioned for an internet reality show called In Turn, where I fought to actor death with 12 other co-stars to be the next soap star on As the World Turns, takes initiative. And couldn't I use initiative to jumpstart my career in sales? I thought about how I could take initiative to move my career forward every day. I asked more experienced brokers if I could shadow them for a day or run one of their open houses. I put more ads on Craigslist. I worked to be less shy. Soon, I started to feel less weird about not going to auditions and more excited about selling. It was a slow, steady process. There were occasional bumps, big and small, but I kept going. At first, I was fueled by fear and the scary thoughts of returning home to Colorado a failure. As I started making more deals, my motivation began to shift. It morphed from, I hope I do enough rentals this month so that I can pay rent and buy a new shirt, to, wow, I just deposited a commission check that will cover my rent for 2 years. What else am I capable of? The hardest thing for me to teach my new sales agents at Team Serhant is how powerful taking initiative really is. It might sound crazy, but those moments when you feel stuck, like you'll never close a sale or get another client again, initiative is like a magical cure-all elixir. Pick up the phone and make a call. Send an email. Follow up with leads. Do something. Taking initiative is like breathing for a salesperson. You cannot survive without it. Take initiative with everything that is put in front of you, and you will experience success every single day. When I got serious about selling real estate, I wanted to succeed. But I felt handicapped by the fact that I wasn't from New York City. I didn't know many people. Who exactly was I going to sell real estate to? And I didn't have the same in-depth knowledge of the different neighborhoods that a native would. After taking initiative, very often self-doubt sets in. But once again, my previous life as an actor ended up being a secret weapon. As an actor, I wasn't fazed by rejection. I was good at reading people, and I could quickly memorize things like facts about buildings. My goofy personality and prematurely gray hair actually won some people over. It doesn't matter if you have a different background than others in your industry. Don't get hindered by self-doubt. Being different can be good. Your skills, whether in the culinary arts, sports, or teaching, add value to your character. If you can manage a class of unruly 7th graders or perform a physical examination on a snake, you can dominate at sales. Who you were before you entered sales matters. Your personality needs to be authentic to you, even if it's quirky. I have very successful team members who tended bar, were in the military, worked in banking, etc. Each of them has a unique body of knowledge and brings their own fresh perspective to their sales practice. Their prior work experience ultimately makes them more interesting and well-rounded people, and it's the same for you. Embrace who you were and think about how your skills can enhance your sales career. I've known I wanted to be successful since I was about 4 years old. Did I have any clue about how I was going to make that happen? None whatsoever. My skill set at that age consisted of a few lame magic tricks and a couple of knock-knock jokes. It turns out that choosing success first and letting the career follow was one of the best things I could have done for myself. It forced me to be open about how that success would come, because it turns out that I wasn't going to have it as an actor. When that dream died, my desire to be successful didn't wither away with it. I was still committed to the idea of success. I just needed to plug into a different route to get there. Most people hit a bump along the way and they think, okay, it's all over for me. But that's not true. If you are committed to being successful no matter what, those bumps don't matter. You've decided on your final destination and you'll do whatever it takes to get there. Serhant's secret number 2. Choose success first, no matter what. Then back yourself into a career. Endurance for the win. Every year, over 50,000 runners come from all over the world to participate in the New York City Marathon, as if running 26.2 miles isn't that big of a deal. Do you know what happened to the first guy who ran a marathon? He dropped dead. Okay, so that was in Greece, where it is super hot, and it was in the year 490 BC. There were no running shoes or water bottles for easy hydration. Now, practically anyone can run a marathon with the right preparation. You train carefully, increase your mileage, eat well, and then put your name on a t-shirt in big, glittery letters so when the crowd shouts, "Go Ryan!" you force yourself to keep moving instead of sitting down on the curb and ordering a pizza. With the proper training, it's possible to cross the finish line and live to Instagram about it. But what if, after all that preparation, the race suddenly switched from a marathon to a sprint? You'd be running slowly and steadily, and now for some unexpected reason, you have to hustle like hell to get to the finish line? You start to increase your speed, you're doing it, but wait, stop, never mind. We're going back to the really long and drawn-out race, and good luck to you. Whether you're in sales for an employer or you're an entrepreneur, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There are the crazy long deals stretched out over what feels like years, a humble pilgrimage to the end result. And there are the deals that are lightning quick, where you feel like a genie, you nod, and there's a prize. Then there are the ones that switch back and forth, nearly sucking you dry of energy and sanity. Sales requires a tremendous amount of endurance, and training yourself to be ready for any kind of deal will give you a gigantic edge over your competitors. Balls up. Sales is like a race, except no one is going to tell you what kind of race it is until that gun goes off. As you start to sell more, it becomes clear that success is about how hard you work. It's about your endurance. It's about your ability to sustain a lot of balls. The more ads I placed, the more showings I did. The more connections I made, the more I sold. It wasn't like acting. No one ever said, I'm not taking this well-priced, spacious apartment that's perfect for me in every way because I don't like your face. Sales is about the work. Simple as that. The best thing about selling is that you can do whatever you want to increase your stamina, survive the race, and cross the finish line. No one is telling you to punch out. The choice is yours. You decide how hard you want to work and how much money you want to make. No salesperson ever got a call like, "Hi, this is Pam, from HR. I have to tell you that you sold way too much this month. Your sales were way over the top and exceeded everyone else's. You're making too much money for this company. Consider this a warning." Am I right? Early in my career, no matter what was thrown at me, I wasn't going to stop. That put me at a competitive advantage over my colleagues. While other brokers were going on vacation in the Hamptons for the weekend, at a movie, out for dinner, or sleeping, I would be hard at work, ready to surge ahead of them. Sales is a crazy race. While they were taking a hot yoga class or eating sushi with friends, I was checking off my to-do list. The 6 rules to more sales. 1. Never hyper-focus on one ball. You do not live or die by one sale. 2. You never wonder what's next because your next deal is already in the works. 3. You are surrounded by opportunity. Making contacts, gaining referrals, generating new business, always reaching for new balls. 4. You know that it takes as much energy to manage one ball as it does 4, 5, or even 6. 5. You control the flight path. You know which balls to handle first, which ones to deal with quickly, and which ones require more time and attention. 6. You don't blindly toss balls in the air. You care about where each one lands. Let fear drive your success. It's 4:53 a.m. on a cold Tuesday morning in December, and I'm trying to decide which cool new headband I should wear to the gym. While I'm debating between the pink and the purple, it becomes harder to ignore the thoughts that are swirling through my head. These thoughts have been known to include, but are not limited to, what if Manhattan blows up? What if Amelia gets mad at me for working too much? What if I fall and shatter my pelvis and can't show apartments? What if I'm pulled in too many directions and my team decides they've all had it? I think I'm getting a cold. Is this a cold? Or is it the flu, like the weird kind you catch from a bird and you die? You know what would be so embarrassing if no one bought my book except my parents? I wake up afraid every day. But my fear is my most powerful source of fuel. It drives me forward unlike anything else. The life I've built for myself, the Sirhan team, 2 TV shows on Bravo, my vlog on YouTube, my beautiful homes, and a wife who is even more beautiful and lovely, looks very different than it did on the day I started my career as a real estate broker. As I mentioned, it was September 15th, 2008, the day Lehman Brothers announced they would file for bankruptcy, triggering the collapse of the world economy. A feeling of uncertainty permeated everything, and it was really hard to feel optimistic about my new job. After I left the office that day, I popped into the food emporium to buy my favorite sources of cheap protein, tofu and yogurt. I gave my credit card to the cashier. A few seconds later, he handed it back. Declined. My heart dropped. I muttered something about getting cash and ran out of the store. I jumped on the subway, sat down, and started to cry. I literally didn't have enough money to buy a container of cheap yogurt. I haven't let myself forget what I felt like that day. Broke and afraid, and like I couldn't make it on my own. It lit a fire in me. Every deal I make, every project I go after, and every extra long day I work is to distance myself as far as I can from that moment. Know what your motivation is. Connect with that one thing that motivates you from deep in your core. It can be life-changing. It's not enough to say, I want to be awesome and make a lot of money. Who doesn't want that? Think about what really pushes you to work harder and do better. What motivates you so deeply that it can provide you with that extra boost of power to send your career into overdrive? Don't let what scares you keep you up at night. Make it push you to reach an insane level of success instead. None of this works without confidence. I'm a very confident person. Hence the name of my book. It took a long time, but I can say without hesitation that I'm a great salesperson. If I let fear rule over everything, I'd be too scared to make a cold call or have a conversation with a new client. It's that touch of fear that keeps everything in balance. But you can't sit on the confident side of the seesaw forever. You'll get stuck in a routine, and this is the real death of a salesman. It also puts you at risk of becoming an overconfident, arrogant asshole, and that's gross. It's usually after my daily workouts that my confidence surges back. I start to think about the challenges of the day. Coaching a Japanese couple through a co-op interview for a $31 million apartment, and dealing with a square footage discrepancy in a $16 million loft in Soho my client is supposed to close on tomorrow. 10 years ago, my biggest problems were making rent and getting into the shower before Jun Woo and Ha Rin used up all the hot water. Their names were printed on a giant smiley face poster that they kept on their door. That's how I remember them. Now, my challenges force me to stretch and be more confident. I have no choice but to figure out the best way to steer my ship forward. The questions, problems, doubts, and fears don't necessarily vanish. They grow along with me. So when I think back to the shit show that was my early career, I'm thankful for what Ben Kennedy did for me. He didn't show me how to rent an apartment, but he showed me what happens when you face your fears head on. You become unstoppable. Every morning after checking my calendar, I'm ready to go. I kiss my sleeping wife goodbye and pop in my earbuds. Just as the elevator door opens, I take a breath, step in, and say my mantra, ready, set, go, knowing I'm ready to face whatever kind of race today throws my way. The Serhant Way. You've made the decision to transform yourself into a selling machine, and that's awesome. Just remember that no one will hand you a roadmap for your own success. Trust me, you're already an amazing salesperson. You just may not know it yet. All the tools you need to succeed in sales are within you. It's just a matter of finding them and putting them to work. Today, use the information in this book to point yourself toward greater success. Decide now that you will take your sales to unimaginable heights. You're already off to a great start because you're now taking more initiative to create change. From now on, initiative will seep from your pores. Don't stop there. Make endurance your middle name. Well, not literally, by outlasting and outselling your competition. And if this all scares you a little bit, so what? Let that fear be the fuel that drives you straight down the path to success. You've got to take initiative. What does that initiative look like to you? Dig deep and find the endurance you need to make it over the finish line. Let your fear push you towards success. Never forget, none of this works without confidence.